am excited to be here for the weekly video series and to talk to you today about values. Um, be sure to sign up to join my weekly email page if you have not. If you go to the Facebook page at Dr. Jennifer Edwards Coaching, there is a button there where you can sign up to be on that email list, and you can enjoy a different article every week about various topics that could be of benefit and of importance to you. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about values, and values are really valuable to discuss because they are at play in anything and everything that we do. So let's start out by talking about what is a value. We hear that term all the time of, your core values, your personal values, and, your values are your morals. I like to look at values as categories or areas of life that are of great importance to you. There is no right or wrong definition of what can constitute a value, but basically, if you think of anything that you hold of high importance, it could be loyalty, it could be communication, family, career, success, personal appearance, health, fitness, um, material wealth, financial stability, which is not the same thing. Um, the list can go on and on and on. Pets, children, you could be even more detailed. You could say parenting, you could specifically say mothering or fathering. Anywhere in your life that you think of, that's important. Orderliness can be a value for some people. For some people, not at all. So the reason values are important is because they really play a role in how we operate our lives, the things that we place as priorities, our actions, big time involved in every decision that we make in our lives. Because generally speaking, we will try, conscious or not, to make decisions that are consistent with our values. Now, where values can come into great importance as well is when we are in a situation where perhaps our values don't agree with somebody else's. Now, there are certain values that we as a society hold to be, let's use the word correct values or truths. And today I'm not really going to be talking about those. Values such as not harming others and how we treat children and um, how we, basically things that are considered immoral, illegal. I'm not talking about those types of values that not every culture actually believes in necessarily the same values, but that we as a society generally agree of certain morals and values. I'm talking more about our own core personal values. Now, very often in life, we might have other people who don't necessarily share the same values. But when we can look at a situation with that context, we can start to see not like, oh, he's such a jerk because he did this or didn't do that, but we can start to see of, wow, I have a really strong value at play here, and therefore it's hard for me to understand his or her behavior. An example of that might be how some people are around the importance of their family. Some people are super, super family value oriented. Other people, not so much. They might love their family. Perhaps they don't fight with their family. They're not resentful or angry. There's no issues going on. They're just, when they see them, they see them, and when they don't, they don't. Now, for the person who has that really strong family value, they might just sit there and think, I don't get it. I just don't understand why he doesn't call his mother. I mean, gosh, his mother's not going to be here forever, and she's there, and how does he just take that for granted? And a person could actually get really upset when they observe somebody else's behavior and it doesn't make sense or they don't agree. Ultimately, the outcome is we tend to make people wrong when their values don't agree with ours. But sometimes when we can take a step back and look at it from the context of values, we might say, I couldn't live that way, but I get that there's no malice here. He just doesn't really have a strong value around the importance of family to him. He loves his mother. For me, that's really important. but we can start to maybe come to a place with certain things where we can honor and respect other people's values. Other values that might come into question for other people might be physical appearance. Some people just have a really strong value around that, or health and fitness, and they just are always working out, and we might place judgment. We might say, wow, she's arrogant, or she's superficial or conceited, or whatever words we want to use, when really that person may not be. It's just important to them how they look. So sometimes when we bring a consciousness to this area of what's important to us and what's not so important to us, it can help us to have a toleration and an understanding, and sometimes even a compassion for other people. One thing that's really important to me, for example, is orderliness. And I can remember times in the past where perhaps I wasn't so understanding, I just didn't get it. Like, how can you just not put things in order, and as I started to learn and grow over the years, I started to realize that's okay. Like, it's just not how their brain works. They're focused on these other things where they might be looking at me thinking, how is she not placing importance on this? I'm not even aware of it. So it goes both ways. And when we start to look at it, it really alleviates a lot of the make wrong that we experience. It can allow other people to feel accepted, that they're okay just the way they are. Perhaps that person in your practice that's not so orderly, okay, maybe they're not the ones responsible for stocking the shelves. Maybe you have them making the phone calls to the clients, because communication might be a huge value for them. And so they're going to be right in it with the client. They're going to be asking questions, having that client feel heard and gotten and appreciated. That might be their value. So put them on the phone. Don't have them organizing inventory. So we can start to see, like, our values are also tied in a little bit with our skill sets, the things that we have an aptitude for, the things we enjoy doing. Somebody might be perfectly capable of organizing the inventory, but hate every minute of it because they just think it's a complete waste of time. They don't get why it's important. Okay, they don't need to get why it's important. Maybe sometimes they just have to do it because there's nobody else. Or maybe you get that person who's like, ooh, let me at it. I want to organize this closet. So there's a lot to be gained in understanding. Now, when we look at ourselves, obviously the most important place to look is always at ourselves. And when we start to dive in and we start to really explore what some of our important core values are, we can start to understand why we make some of the decisions that we do. It can help us to make decisions. For example, if a person is in a job situation and they're just not happy, they could and probably have spent some time coming home complaining if Dr. So-and-so is a jerk, or manager is this, or this other employee is that. And that might temporarily make them feel better, probably won't get them very far in figuring out what's important to them and making decisions in life. Now, if they were to say, okay, I can see that I have a strong value around orderliness and communication, and that value is not really present at this hospital right now. That doesn't work for me because I come home every day frustrated because that communication thing is not being fulfilled. Well, with that awareness, they could choose to go have conversations with people and say, hey, let me share with you where I see we might improve communication, because for me that's really important and I feel like it's lacking. Or ultimately they might just say, you know what, this is actually not a fit for me. But coming to that place, not from make wrong and not from like, oh, they're a bunch of jerks, but from a place of understanding that their focus just really isn't on communication. They're focused on maybe these other things that I don't find as important. Maybe we're just not a match. So it can really empower us to consciously make choices, to evaluate things a little bit more, I use the word objectively because it's still our subjective feelings, but a little bit more concretely. Same thing with personal relationships. So it's not just situations. We might say, you know, I can see that this person, for example, like the example I used earlier, this person has a strong value around family, which is great. They have a strong value around personal appearance, that's great. A strong value around money, that's great. All the power to them. I'm not just really working out in a relationship with them because none of that stuff is important to me, and I value orderliness. They're messy. I value, I don't know, making things up, honesty, and maybe they're not always so honest in their life. And so you can see where I'm going with this. You can start to discern things from a value standpoint, and it starts to make a lot more sense. So with that, I do talk a lot about coaching. Obviously, it's one of my passions and what I do. And part of a coaching process can also be diving into what are called values assessments. There's many of them out there. You might even be able to find some free online. And you can start to do worksheets to find out what really are my values. And of these, say, top 5 or 6 values, how present are they really in my life? If somebody they realize, I really do have a strong value around family, but gee, I just really don't talk to my parents that often. So then we start to say, okay, how can you increase that in your life? Well, maybe I'll start calling them once a week. Yeah. And then we can start to feel better because now we're living in accordance with our values. When we bring that awareness to it, we start to understand. So next week, I'm going to be talking about values challenges, and that's when we do find ourselves in situations where what is going on and our values just do not match up at all. And those are equal learning opportunities. They don't feel very good usually, but it's a way of starting to evaluate how we might either understand a situation or a person better, how we might shift it, or how we might consciously and powerfully choose to leave it, depending on what it is. So I'm going to talk about that next week. In the meantime, like I said in the beginning, I invite everybody to subscribe to my email list and share with all of your friends. Feel free to share my videos. This community is not limited to any one segment of people. I'm happy to invite anybody and everybody. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and I will talk to you next week. Take care.